Chapter 1685. What? The man seemed to be in shock as he stared at the woman in shock. His eyes were filled with astonishment. Rest well here. The woman seemed to have no time to say anything else. After instructing the servants to take care of the second young master, she turned around and left. Her eyes were filled with sternness as she said, "Go and summon the elders." "Yes." As the woman walked away, the man lying on the bed slowly let out a sigh of relief. He relaxed his body and slowly closed his eyes. "Second brother, why didn't you let me tell Aunt that those uncontrollable wolves were?" After her aunt left, Winter anxiously asked the man lying on the bed. Her eyes were filled with confusion. "Jouer." The man slowly opened his eyes. His pitch-black eyes were filled with an intense coldness. He stared at Winjouer and said, "You only need to answer my question. If I don't ask you to say anything else, don't say anything. Otherwise, you'll have to pay the price for what you say." The man's eyes were so cold that the little girl seemed to be surprised by the man's words. Looking at the man's eyes that were staring at her as if she was a complete stranger, her body suddenly trembled violently. Yes, Jouer understands. The little girl seemed to be extremely shocked. She pursed her lips tightly and lowered her head as she knelt on the ground, not daring to move. Winjouer could not understand why her second brother would do this. Second aunt was the head of the musical aristocratic family, and her second brother was the future successor. She was just a lowly servant. She probably did not have the right to understand the deep meaning behind this. The man slowly lay on the bed and stared at the top of the bed. He slowly closed his eyes as if he was thinking about something. The man's hands by his side slowly clenched. It was just some people from the pugilistic world, but they had hurt him. If his mother knew that he was so useless, the man's body could not help but tremble violently as if he was thinking about the useless punishment he would receive. He could only make his words vague so that his mother would think that it was not just people from the pugilistic world who came in this time. Only then would she not blame him. If he were to be questioned afterwards, he would find out that he did not mention any of the main points. He would have an excuse and a way out. That would be enough. On the other side of the Sand City, there were a few people sitting alone. This was a familiar scene. The woman sitting at the side had a cold look in her eyes. She stared at the person who wrote the second half of the couplet and said, "Strange pupil is here." "What?" As soon as the woman finished speaking, the faces of the three men and the woman below were filled with astonishment. One of the three men was someone Jing Yu was familiar with. It was during the battle outside Jinling City. Jing Yu was controlled by the people from the Sound Attack aristocratic family who had suddenly appeared. The leader of this group was the man who sat beside the woman. He was called Villa Master G. Abnormal pupils? They came to find us. Manorhead G's eyes were filled with astonishment as he asked in horror. "Not bad." The woman sitting at the head of the table slowly nodded and said, "Hung has already clashed with this strange pupil. Fortunately, he only suffered minor injuries and came back." Chapter 1686. Second young master is injured. He's already fought with the other pupil. Manorhead G's expression turned even uglier. When he heard the woman's words, he suddenly felt a sense of panic. He frowned deeply and said, "When the Holy Family sent a letter saying that the other pupil was still alive, I felt very uneasy. I didn't think that this day would come so early." Manorhead G frowned deeply. "Aunt, what do you plan to do?" Manorhead G looked up at the woman and said, "The last time we fought, our vitality was greatly damaged. Although we've mostly recovered after a long period of recuperation, my little sister still hasn't fully recovered. If she continues to fight with the other pupil, I'm afraid it will be difficult." "I understand." The woman nodded slowly and said, "But since the other pupil is here, we can't just sit here and wait for death. Aunt, is the news of the other pupil's arrival true?" The man sitting on the other side had a face full of beard, but his eyes were full of light. After a moment of silence, he asked in a deep voice, "Are you suspecting that Hung is lying?" When the woman heard this question, she frowned in displeasure and said, "To be able to use the sound of music to steal the beast's control. Who else do you think it could be other than the other pupil?" When a man heard the woman's words, He lowered his head deeply and didn't say anything else. I called you all here to tell you that the other pupil's attack is coming. We can't wait here any longer. The woman slowly stood up and said, if the other pupil's people come to Sand City, it will be extremely disadvantageous for us. Aunt, what do you plan to do? After hearing the woman's words, the people below also straightened their bodies and asked solemnly, we will take the initiative to attack. Before the other pupil's woman can make any preparations, we will kill them all outside Sand City. When the woman said this, her pitch-black eyes were filled with intense killing intent. Everyone looked at the woman's face and felt fear in their hearts. Jing Yu, Xiao Chun, and the others who just came out of the oasis didn't know that they were being watched. It was probably because they spent the night in the oasis that they felt refreshed. They didn't feel uncomfortable walking in the desert anymore. They even felt like they had just entered the desert. It was very comfortable. Why do I feel that this section of the road is so quiet? Jingyu blinked her eyes curiously and asked, could it be that we're the only ones who escaped from the wolf pack? Jingyu looked around curiously and asked, you're thinking too much. Feng Ling leisurely placed her hand behind her head and said, don't think that those people from the big factions are useless. If they want to be ruthless, even you and I can't compare. If the people of the pugilistic world fight with their lives on the line, it's indeed very scary, Feng Maching said very calmly from the side. You're praising yourselves. When Jingyu heard their words, the corners of her mouth curled up in amusement and said, you're talking as if you're not from the pugilistic world. That. Feng Ling looked at Jingyu seriously and said, we're the kind of people who cherish our lives very much. If we can't win, we'll run. Chapter 16, 87. Jingyu smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. Listening to everyone's words, a faint smile appeared in her eyes. Such peaceful days were truly delightful. Listening to Feng Ling and the others talking, Jingyu's lips curled up in joy. From time to time, she would interrupt. She could see Feng Ling and Feng Maching quarreling fiercely, and the person playing the role of the King of Hell was quietly following behind. Jingyu hadn't heard him say a word for so long. One amazing person. In the desert, under the scorching sun, Jingyu's expression was very calm. When she looked sideways, she happened to see Xing Yi handing the water bottle in his hand to Su Yu. Su Yu looked at the water bottle in Xing Yi's hand and frowned slightly. Palace Lord, drink some water. Just as Su Yu was frowning, another hand reached over from the side. Su Yu lowered her head silently and took the water Ling Yong handed over. Xing Yi's expression darkened bit by bit. Jingyu saw this scene and sighed deeply. What a strange trio. On this journey, such situations would happen many times. Jingyu was tired of seeing it. She really didn't know what Xing Yi was talking about. Jingyu was extremely conflicted about the relationship between these three people. However, these three people didn't seem to feel anything. Jingyu thought that this time would be the same as before. Xing Yi would still take the water bottle in his hand and sit silently at the side. However, there were always accidents in the world. Just as Jingyu was thinking this, she suddenly saw Xing Yi suddenly reach out and violently throw the water bottle Ling Yong handed over to him on the ground. Then, without a word, he grabbed Su Yu's hand and walked towards the sand dune outside the circle. Palace Lord. Ling Yong's expression changed, and he suddenly stood up. Second brother. 15th brother. Stop him. Xing Yi's gloomy voice sounded. Xing Er and Xing Shiwu both stood up at the same time, blocking Ling Yong. Xing Yi called out Lao Er and Lao Shiwu without the word Xing. This meant that he was calling them brothers, unlike Xiao Chun, who called them brothers as an order. As brothers, Xing Er and Xing Shiwu were duty-bound to block Ling Yong. Get out of the way. Ling Yong's face was filled with gloom. Xing Yi won't treat Su Yu like this. Protector Ling, you'd better not do anything. Otherwise, we're all members of the same team, and we'll lose face if we fight. Just as the three of them were about to start fighting, Jingyu's voice drifted over, causing the atmosphere to dissipate bit by bit. What do you mean? Ling Yong turned to look at Jingyu. It's literally what it means. Jingyu shrugged nonchalantly. Ling Yong's eyes were filled with anger. He turned to look at Feng Ling, Feng Maching, and the others who were watching in silence. An incomparably sullen feeling rose in Feng Ling's heart, but he couldn't do anything about it at the moment. Jing Yu watched as Ling Yong sat down at the side, then nodded in satisfaction. On the other side, Su Yu was suddenly dragged away by Interrogation Officer 1. Just like that, Interrogation Officer 1 grabbed Su Yu's hand and strode forward. Behind him, Su Yu almost had to jog in order to catch up. When she finally stopped outside, Su Yu was panting a little. "You?" Su Yu raised her head and was about to speak, but she saw that Xing Yi, who was holding her hand tightly and had his back facing her, didn't say a word. He reached out and pulled Su Yu into his arms, leaned forward, and kissed her lips. Chapter 1688. It was probably because Su Yu hated him. Hey, brother. Feng Ling came over curiously and swallowed her saliva. She looked at Xing Yi and said, "Don't tell me you took advantage of the palace lord of Constellation Palace. That's why she got slapped?" After Feng Ling said that, everyone could feel the anger rising from Xing Yi's body. "You're right." When Feng Ling saw Interrogation Officer 1's reaction, she instantly jumped up as if she had seen a ghost. She looked at Interrogation Officer 1 in shock. Interrogation Officer 1 silently turned his head to look at Feng Ling. The expression on Feng Ling's face immediately froze. Just as Feng Ling was about to say something, Xing Yi suddenly reached out and held Feng Ling's shoulder. Brother, I really couldn't tell that you were so powerful." Feng Ling looked at the hand on her shoulder and said to Xing Yi with a smile. Interrogation Officer 1 continued to look at Feng Ling silently, then pulled out a calm smile. Feng Ling was slightly taken aback. Just as he was about to smile as well, a vicious look suddenly appeared in Interrogation Officer 1's eyes. Almost as soon as Feng Ling was caught off guard, a fist landed viciously on Feng Ling's stomach. Ugh! Feng Ling curled up like a prawn and curled up on the ground, unable to say a word. "I wanted to hit you for a long time." Feng Maching gave Xing Yi a big thumbs up. Xing Yi looked at Feng Ling lying on the ground and walked away without saying a word. Jing Yu looked at Xing Yi and then at Feng Ling. She deeply felt that this was the consequence of courting death. However, Feng Ling had guessed correctly. Interrogation Officer 1 and Su Yu were probably... It was hard to say what the situation was now. However, Su Yu chased Xing Yi so much back then, and he didn't know how to cherish her. Now he knew how good she was? Do you think he can go back so easily? She was thinking too much. It was better to let this man know, so that he would know how to cherish people in the future. Jing Yu leaned comfortably on Xiao Chun and didn't ask much about Xing Yi. After a short rest, they set off again. Walking on the road, Jing Yu could clearly feel Xing Yi's absent-mindedness. Shangwan Linglan carefully pulled Jing Yu to his side. Then, she pushed Xing Er to Xiao Chen's side. Xing Er and Xiao Chun both turned to look at Jing Yu and Shangwan Linglan. When they saw the looks on their faces, they helplessly turned their heads and continued walking. "What's wrong?" Jing Yu looked at Shangwan Linglan and asked curiously. "Nothing. I just want to go with you." Shangwan Linglan looked at Jing Yu and said calmly. "Forget it." Jing Yu looked at Shangwan Linglan with disdain and said, "I saw that you couldn't wait to stick to Xing Er. Do you still remember me? You're still talking about me." Shangwan Linglan heard Jing Yu's words and suddenly blushed. She said angrily, "Aren't you also sticking to Xiao Chun? You're already the father and mother of the child, but you're still like this." "Poochie." Jing Yu poked Shangwan Linglan's arm and said, "Tell me the truth. Are you going to ask me how to get pregnant faster?" You, lower your voice." When Jing Yu finished speaking, Shangwan Linglan seemed to explode. Almost without thinking, she covered Jing Yu's mouth and turned to look at Xing Er and Xiao Chun, who were walking in front. Chapter 1689. Seeing that the two of them did not move at all, she thought that the two of them did not hear her. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief and let out a deep sigh. However, how could Xing Er and Xiao Chun not hear her? Originally, when Jing Yu and Shangwan Linglan walked together and the two of them looked like they were on good terms, the two of them were very jealous. They wanted to hear what the two of them were going to talk about behind their backs. With that thought, The two of them listened carefully to the conversation between the two of them. Just as they were engrossed in the conversation, they suddenly heard Jing Yu's words. Second Xing almost lost his footing. Fortunately, his mental fortitude was rather good, so he instantly steadied himself. However, her head slowly drooped down, and the tips of her ears instantly turned red. The atmosphere between Xing Er and Xiao Chen instantly became incomparably strange. Xing Er obviously knew that his master must have heard their conversation. He immediately became even more embarrassed and lowered his head without saying a word. Xiao Chen probably sensed the strange awkwardness and coughed slightly before saying, "This, having a child, is a big matter. You have to make good use of it." Xing Er's face froze for a moment before he replied in silence, "Yes." However, he was completely confused. He did not know what Xiao Chen meant by making good use of it. However, if he were to ask, Xing Er would not have the face to do so. After Xiao Chen finished speaking, he also did not know what the hell he was talking about. He coughed slightly and decisively chose to walk forward quickly. He did not want to hear what Jing Yu and Shangwan Linglan were talking about anymore. Xing Er probably had the same thoughts as Xiao Chen. Immediately, the two of them quickened their pace and walked forward. Jing Yu and Shangwan Linglan seemed to have vaguely heard Second Xing's response. The two of them quickened their pace and walked forward. They were still thinking that the two of them had something to discuss, so they did not take it seriously. "This is not something shameful. Why do you want me to speak softly?" Jing Yu asked curiously when she saw Shangwan Linglan's big reaction. "Jing Yu, do you have any sense of shame?" Shangwan Linglan glared at Jing Yu and asked in disdain. Hey, who asked this first?" Jing Yu asked Shangwan Linglan. "I." Shangwan Linglan's face instantly turned red. "Okay." Jing Yu hugged Shangwan Linglan's arm and asked, "Tell me first, how far have you and Xing Er progressed?" "About giving birth. If you want me to tell you properly, I really can't say it. Because when I was pregnant, I didn't even know what was going on," Jing Yu said calmly as she shrugged. "Really? You didn't feel anything at all?" Shangwan Linglan suddenly frowned and looked at Jing Yu. He asked again, "Then was giving birth very painful?" "I heard from my mother that it was very painful." "Well," Jing Yu pursed her lips and said, "when you see your child with your own eyes, you will feel that any pain is worth it." Shangwan Linglan suddenly frowned and said, "It really is very painful. I suddenly don't want to give birth anymore. What should I do?" "Ha ha ha." Jing Yu looked at Shangwan Linglan and suddenly laughed out loud. The people around them looked over and saw Jing Yu and Shanghai Linglan talking and laughing. Their gazes softened. Chapter 1690. What are you laughing at? Shangwan Linglan blushed when he heard Jing Yu's laughter. "I'm not laughing at anything. You should think about it now. Once we get back to Tokyo, you should hurry up and get married." Jing Yu tugged on Shangwan Linglan's hand and said, "If you continue to dawdle, what if Xing Er takes a fancy to another girl? Let's see what you'll do then." Shangwan Linglan immediately straightened his back. When he heard Jing Yu's words, he immediately turned to look at Xing Er. When he looked over, he saw that Xing Er was talking to Ku Er. He didn't know what they were talking about, but he was looking at Ku Er with a sweet smile. Shangwan Linglan's heart skipped a beat. Without saying a word, he strode over to Xing Er and reached out to hold Xing Er's arm. He said gently, "I'm tired from walking. Let me lean on you." Xing Er's body froze. He looked at Shangwan Linglan and nodded apologetically. "Miss Ku Er, you should ask Qin Gu personally about this matter." "Okay." Ku Er lowered her head shyly and nodded at Xing Er and Shangwan Linglan before walking away. Shangwan Linglan looked at Ku Er's back as she walked away. There was a hint of confusion in his eyes. What were the two of them talking about? Xing Er looked at Shangwan Linglan's hand that was hugging him tightly and asked, "What's wrong? Are you tired?" "No." When Shangwan Linglan heard Xing Er's words, he hurriedly turned his head and looked at his hand. Just as he was thinking about whether he should pull his hand back, Xing Er took the initiative to hold it. The weather was hot, but Xing Er's hand seemed to be slightly cold. Shangwan Linglan originally wanted to pull his hand back, but now he just let Xing Er hold it. He seemed to have thought of something and lowered his head slightly. What did Miss Kaer say to you just now? Shangwan Linglan pursed his lips and asked Xing Er. She wanted to ask about Qing Ge. Xing Er didn't think much of it and replied slowly. Oh. When he heard Xing Er's words, Shangwan Linglan instantly felt relieved. What's wrong? Xing Er seemed to have sensed something as he turned to look at Shangwan Linglan. He happened to see Shangwan Linglan heaving a sigh of relief. His lips curled into a faint smile as he said, Are you jealous? I'm not. When Shangwan Linglan heard Xing Er's words, the redness on his face deepened. Fortunately, he was wearing a veil. Otherwise, Shangwan Linglan would have found a hole to hide in. Xing Er looked at Shangwan Linglan's expression and smiled faintly. When Shangwan Linglan saw Xing Er's expression, he was so angry that he wanted to pull his hand back. However, how could Xing Er let Shangwan Linglan do as he wished? He grabbed Shangwan Linglan's hand tightly and didn't let go. Shangwan Linglan tried to break free, but he couldn't. He glared at Xing Er in disdain and said, You're hurting me. Don't move. Second interrogation officer relaxed his grip on Shangwan Linglan's hand as expected. He quietly held onto Shangwan Linglan's hand and walked forward with steady steps. Jingyu was behind the two of them. When she saw their actions, a faint smile appeared in her eyes. Xiao Chun naturally came to her side. When Jingyu looked sideways, she saw Xiao Chun looking straight ahead and found it very interesting. Chapter 1691. The group walked in the desert for many days. Jingyu began to wonder if they had gone a wrong way. Wasn't the Sand City on the edge of the oasis? Why hadn't they reached it after walking for so many days? There is more than one oasis in the desert. When Jingyu asked Xiao Chun, she heard Xiao Chun say this to her. Jingyu nodded as if she understood. It turned out that there was more than one oasis in the desert. So you're saying that it's very likely that we're not going to the oasis on the edge of the Sand City. Jingyu suddenly frowned. She looked sideways at Xiao Chun and said, Let's ask Pang Shuwei first. Is this the right path? Jingyu said and walked towards Pang Shuwei. Pang Shuwei was looking at the map with everyone. When he saw Jingyu and Xiao Chun walking over, he immediately moved aside. Where are we now? This is the right direction, right? Jingyu glanced at the map, then looked up at Pang Shuwei and asked. The direction is definitely the right one. Pang Shuwei frowned slightly and said, But there's a problem now. When we obtained the treasure map, there was a fight. The part that we obtained can only take us here. We don't know where the next part of the map is. We don't know which force has the other part of the map. Pang Shuwei said seriously, This is the Sand City, but after walking for a while, the road diverges into 3 directions. Which one should we go? It's actually an incomplete map. Jingyu looked at the map on the ground and frowned. Her eyes were full of seriousness. This was troublesome. There should be a stone forest in front. Pang Shuwei said again. Now we can only take one step at a time. Let's go to the stone forest first. As for which path to take, we'll discuss it later. Yes, that's the only way. Everyone nodded in agreement. There was a sense of helplessness in their hearts. Not knowing the direction of the map made them feel uneasy. Fortunately, they had encountered an oasis before. This time, the water source was sufficient. If he took the wrong path, he could just walk back. There shouldn't be any problems. With that thought in mind, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. After a short rest, they continued to move forward. From where Jingyu and the others were, they walked to the last spot on the map. When they arrived at the last spot on the map, everyone was stunned. Standing on top of the hill, they could see the towering soil from afar. That's right, it wasn't a stone forest in front of them. Those towering soil were all piled up together like piles of pillars. Looking from afar, it was an incomparably spectacular sight. The sand was divided into 3 paths, almost turning the entire desert into a sand pile. This place is really magical, Jingyu exclaimed. These sand piles were blown out by the wind over the years. Zhuji said faintly, I don't know how many years have passed, but these sand piles have become like this. I see. Hearing this, Jingyu nodded in realization. Her eyes were tinged with a faint smile. She turned to look at Zhuji and said, I didn't expect young masters were to know about this. Chapter 1692. Of course. Zhuji turned around to look at Jingyu and said, there are too many unknown dangers in this desert. If we don't understand them clearly and die in this desert one day without knowing why, wouldn't it be too ridiculous? Ha ha ha. Jingyu immediately laughed when she heard this. She sighed and said, young Master Zhua, I agree with what you said. Let's go down. While Jingyu was talking to Zhuji, the group had already walked down. Jingyu followed behind them and walked towards the sand forest. It looked very spectacular from afar, but when they stood under the sand, they suddenly felt like they were surrounded by people. They looked up at the towering sand and sighed countless times in their hearts. This was the wonder of nature. To be able to turn the sand into such a state, it was like an exquisite piece of art. Jingyu seemed to have thought of something. She tilted her head slightly and looked at Xiao Chun as she asked, Xiao Chun, do you still remember the desert where we met Yi Shui? I remember. Xiao Chun nodded slowly and said, however, the marks on the desert were blown by the wind, but this isn't. Yes, this wind is really a scary thing. Jingyu said indifferently. When she turned her head, she saw a group of people walking inside. Jingyu and the others followed them in. This is really a good place. Feng Maching narrowed his eyes and said, it's like a maze. If we want to set up an ambush or something, this is the best place to do it. Forget it, Feng Ling said with disdain. Feng Ling glared at Feng Maching in disdain and said, as expected of someone from Sunluo Tower. Every time you open your mouth, you talk about killing. Who in this desert would dare to attack us? When Jingyu heard these two people's words, a faint smile appeared on her face. Then, as if she thought of something, she frowned and her eyes became serious. She suddenly stopped in her tracks. Did you hear something? Jingyu asked with a serious expression. What? Feng Ling and Feng Maching didn't want to give in to each other's quarrel. When they suddenly heard Jingyu's serious words, they were stunned and asked doubtfully, is there a strange sound? I didn't hear it. Everyone looked at each other. No, there's a sound. Jingyu's expression became serious. She suddenly looked up and said, it's music. Come out. Retreat. Without thinking, Jingyu turned around and led Feng Ling and the others outside like crazy. The people inside didn't know what was going on. Some of them reacted quickly. After hearing Jingyu's panicked voice, they rushed out with Jingyu almost at the same time. As for those who reacted slower and were still talking and laughing, they didn't know what was going on. Suddenly, he seemed to have sensed something. He raised his head slightly and saw countless sand snakes falling from the sky. The snakes were all hidden in the sand and stones. Now at this moment, they rushed out crazily. In an instant, those people were surrounded. A few of them quickly shook off the snakes that fell on them and rushed out. Chapter 1693. However, before they could even catch their breaths, they were stunned by the situation before them. Jingyu and Xiao Chun, who were the first to run out, froze on the spot, not daring to move an inch. The originally spacious road was now completely blocked, and the people blocking the road were Jingyu and the rest of the group were all familiar with. The densely packed wolf heads appeared one after another, as if all the wolves in the desert had been summoned. Jingyu swallowed hard and pursed her lips tightly as she looked at the situation before her. So, what is going on now? The sound of music suddenly rang out. In this vast and empty desert, this music was so familiar. Jingyu faintly pursed her lips and slowly raised her head. She saw many people appear behind the wolf pack. The music stopped, and Jingyu and the rest looked at the sand snakes behind them and the sand wolves in front of them. They were all staring at Jingyu and the others like tigers watching their prey. They seemed to be waiting for orders to attack. Sound attack, aristocratic family. Jingyu looked at those people from afar, and her eyes, hidden under the veil, were filled with a strong, murderous intent. Don't be rash. Xiao Chen held Jingyu's hand and slowly hid behind the group. He said solemnly, those people recognize us. Don't let them see us. Zhuji saw Xiao Chun and Jingyu's actions and suddenly said with a frown, everyone, cover your faces. No one knew why they had to cover their faces, but since it was said, there must be a reason for doing so. When Jingyu heard Zhuji's words, She turned to look at Zhuji with a smile and thanked him softly. You don't have to thank me. Just remember that you owe me a favor, Zhuji said calmly as he narrowed his eyes. When Jingyu heard Zhuji's words, the corners of her lips curled slightly. She didn't say anything and slowly took out her bayonet. It looked like there would be another fierce battle today. While Jingyu and the rest were on guard, the members of the Sound Attack aristocratic family slowly frowned. Third brother, can you tell which one is the woman with different pupils and the ninth uncle? The person who was addressed as Auntie tilted her head and asked, Aunt, they're all masked. I really can't recognize them. Mannerhead Ji, who was being taught, looked at Jingyu's group from afar. He frowned and said, There aren't many women among them. Forget it, the woman said calmly. The woman said calmly, Just command the wolves to attack. If there are people with different pupils, they will definitely counterattack. When the time comes, we will know if there really are people with different pupils. If there aren't, they are just people who are eyeing the treasures of our sand city. Just kill them, the woman said calmly. When everyone heard this, their bodies trembled violently, and they agreed respectfully. The music started playing again. When Jingyu heard the music, her heart couldn't help but tighten. She frowned as she looked at the wolves approaching step by step, and the hissing sand snakes behind her. She couldn't understand why the members of the Sound Attack aristocratic family would suddenly attack them. Could they have discovered that they had entered the desert? Chapter 1694. Under normal circumstances, this shouldn't have happened. Jingyu and Xiao Chun had been in the desert for so long, but they had never revealed their special pupils in front of anyone. How could they have been discovered here? Or could it be that the musical attack family hadn't discovered the existence of Jingyu and Xiao Chun, and they had appeared here just to test them? Jingyu was a little confused, but the current situation didn't give Jingyu a chance to think too much. The wolves and sand snakes attacked in an instant. This time, the music was very different from the previous one. Jingyu and the others were having a hard time dealing with it. The wolves and sand snakes were very difficult to deal with. Once again, they launched an encirclement when everyone was unprepared. Jingyu frowned. Seeing that everyone was having a hard time dealing with it, she knew that they couldn't go on like this. They had to think of a solution. Otherwise, they would be in trouble. Jingyu looked around. The current situation was very bad for them, but it seemed that there was no way to turn things around. The music sounded even clearer. The wolves and sand snakes were attacking with all their might. There were many bloodstains on everyone's bodies. Jingyu's face turned cold. These musical attack family obviously didn't intend to stop. Even if they couldn't find any special pupils in this team, they definitely wouldn't let them go. Don't be rash. Xiao Chun seemed to know what Jingyu wanted to do. He reached out and grabbed Jingyu's arm. He said very seriously, Now is not the time to expose your special pupils. We have to find another solution. These people from the aristocratic family of sound attacks clearly have no intention of stopping. Jingyu's eyes were full of coldness as she said, If I don't do something, they will all die. Jingyu panted heavily. Xiao Chen's expression stiffened when he heard Jingyu's words. He turned to look at Pang Shiwei and He Xiong, who were engaged in a bitter battle, and furrowed his brows. Xiao Chun, I don't want more people to die because of me. Jingyu stared deeply at Xiao Chun as she spoke. Her deep words made Xiao Chen's expression change slightly. Do you know what the consequences will be if you reveal your unusual pupils? Xiao Chun tightened his grip on Jingyu's hand as he said gravely, If you reveal that you have abnormal pupils, the people from the Sound Attack aristocratic family will kill them all. I understand, but I have the ability to fight them. I can't just sit by and watch. Jingyu replied resolutely. Xiao Chen's expression changed rapidly. In the end, he sighed deeply and said, Since you have made your decision, then do it. Xiao Chen's words were filled with helplessness, but he also seemed to be relieved. Jingyu would probably make such a decision because she was Jingyu. Jingyu stared deeply at Xiao Chun and finally said slowly, Xiao Chun, I'm sorry. Why are you apologizing to me? Whether we live or die, I will be with you. Xiao Chun stared deeply at Jingyu and said, Don't let me hear those words again. Jingyu's eyes were filled with a faint smile. She turned around and took a step forward. Through the veil in front of her, she looked at the people from the Sound Attack aristocratic family in the distance. Her expression gradually turned serious. Just as Jingyu was about to control the wolf pack, Jingyu's expression suddenly changed. Chapter 1695. A very strange feeling came from her stomach, causing Jingyu's face to turn slightly pale. What's wrong? Xiaoqin saw Jingyu's stiff appearance and was slightly stunned. He looked at the wolves in front of him and saw that they hadn't been dispersed. He immediately frowned and asked Jingyu. I don't know what's wrong. Jingyu slowly swallowed her saliva and said, Xiaoqin, I can't control the wolves. What? Xiaoqin's expression changed slightly. Suddenly, as if he thought of something, he reached out and lifted Jingyu's veil. With a glance, he saw Jingyu's pair of pitch-black eyes. Her eyes were black. Her eyes were black. Xiaoqin's heart trembled slightly. He stared at Jingyu and said, I know. Jingyu didn't know what Xiaoqin meant by I know, but Jingyu clearly felt the seriousness in Xiaoqin's eyes. Jingyu didn't open her mouth to ask anything, but she heard Xiaoqin order people to light the torches. The remaining torches from last time. Light them all up and burn them towards the wolves and snakes. Xiaoqin's words seemed to have awakened everyone. Suddenly, everyone took out their fire extinguishers and lit the torches. On this side, Jingyu and Xiaoqin lit the torches. The wolves and snakes seemed to be very afraid and retreated a lot. It wasn't easy for everyone to have a little time to breathe, but this situation didn't last for long. The people from the Sound Attack family were somewhat irritated. Annie, these people have been forced to this point, but they didn't show any abnormal pupils. Could it be that we found the wrong person? Villa Master Ji frowned deeply and looked at the woman beside him and asked. The woman didn't say anything, but the hands hanging by her side clenched little by little. She frowned fiercely. I heard that there are several forces that entered the desert this time. There are several teams. Another man on the side said, Could it be that the abnormal pupils aren't in this team? It's not impossible. Villa Master Ji slowly nodded and said, But this team's fighting strength is really tyrannical. They can actually hold on for so long. This is probably some of the famous big sects in the underworld. The other man responded again. The two people talked for a long time, and the second Annie didn't respond. As if thinking of something, he slightly frowned and said, Second Auntie, should we continue? The woman frowned deeply. Her heart was full of unwillingness. She didn't know why, but she always felt that this team wasn't that simple. But what was going on now? Could it be that the abnormal pupils really weren't in this team? Just as the woman was silent, a person suddenly ran over from afar. His eyes were filled with anxiety and panic. He suddenly knelt in front of the woman and said in a panic, Auntie, it's not good. Many people have broken into the Sand City. What did you say? The woman's expression changed at this moment. She frowned fiercely and her eyes were filled with fear. She stared at the person in front of her and asked, Who is it? It's those people from the underworld. They're now fighting together. The man who came to deliver the message looked like he was about to cry. After saying this, the woman suddenly flung her sleeves fiercely and her eyes were filled with dense, killing intent. Chapter 1696. This girl with different pupils really played me like a fool. The woman gritted her teeth and said, Return to the city. Yes. Everyone bowed in response. They looked at the sand wolves below and asked, Auntie, what do we do with these sand wolves? Trash. Take them back to where they came from. The woman looked at the people below with disgust and said coldly, These people are really lucky. Let's go. The people from the Sound Attack aristocratic family left just like that. Jingyu, Xiaoqin, and the others were almost unable to hold on. They originally thought that they were going to suffer a big setback here today, but they didn't expect that just when everyone was ready to fight with their lives on the line, the people from the Sound Attack aristocratic family left just like that. The people from the Sound Attack aristocratic family left in a hurry. The Sand Wolves were no longer under control and were also summoned away. Everyone looked at the people who left and suddenly widened their eyes. They didn't know what was going on now. When the sand wolves and sand snakes were all gone, everyone was still standing in place with their hands clenched. They looked at the wolf and human corpses on the ground and were still a little confused. It ended just like that. Chingu, Ku'er, quickly bandage everyone's wounds. Jingyu called out, her body swaying a little. Yu'er, what's wrong? Xiaochen quickly reached out to support Jingyu. Jingyu frowned and reached out to take off her gauze hat. The uncomfortable feeling in her eyes made Jingyu close her eyes tightly. What's wrong with my eyes? Jingyu looked up at Xiaochun and asked. Jingyu's pitch-black eyes stared intently at Xiaochun. Xiaochun looked at Jingyu's black eyes and opened his mouth slightly. It seemed like he wanted to say something but didn't know what to say. Shengwan Linglan just happened to walk over. When he walked over and saw Jingyu, he was stunned. Jingyu, Shengwan Linglan opened his mouth slightly and looked at Jingyu with eyes full of surprise. What's wrong with me? Jingyu frowned and asked Shengwan Linglan. Your eyes, why did they turn black again? Shengwan Linglan looked at Jingyu in a daze and asked, could it be that your eyes can change color again? Shengwan Linglan looked at Jingyu and asked in surprise. My eyes are black. When Jingyu heard Shengwan Linglan's words, her heart trembled violently and her lips turned pale. Why did her eyes disappear? And she didn't feel anything at all. It's okay. When Xiaochen reached out to hug Jingyu, he suddenly saw Jingyu's eyes tremble slightly. Then, under the gaze of Xiaochun and Shengwan Linglan, they turned golden green again. Aya! Shengwan Linglan suddenly exclaimed and said again, Jingyu, can your eyes really change color now? Look, they've recovered. What the hell? Jingyu was completely dumbfounded this time. She blinked slightly and rubbed her eyes. Then, as if she had thought of something, she frowned and said, it's not under my control. What the hell are my eyes doing? Jingyu looked at Xiaochun and Shengwan Linglan and asked in confusion, how would we know what's going on with your eyes? Shengwan Linglan frowned slightly and stared at Jingyu as he said in confusion, the eyes are on your own body. How dare you ask us what's going on? Chapter 1697. It doesn't matter. Let's save them first. Pang Shiwei and the rest can decide whether they want to follow us or not. Okay. Xiaochun and Shengwan Linglan nodded slowly. After cleaning up the mess and comforting the injured, the sky had darkened. Qingge could finally rest. He casually ate a few mouthfuls of food and fell asleep without saying a word. Jingyu looked at Qingge and shook her head helplessly. She went to tell Pang Shiwei about her situation. Pang Shiwei was not surprised when he heard that Jingyu and the rest were leaving. He turned to discuss with He Xiong and the rest. The result of the discussion surprised Jingyu. She originally thought that Pang Shiwei and the rest would choose to stay here. She did not expect that Pang Shiwei and the rest would choose to follow Jingyu. Madam Xiao, us brothers will go with you. Pang Shiwei looked at Jingyu and Xiaochun and said, if it weren't for you, us brothers would have died. Now that you are in trouble, how can we not help? That's right. He Xiong stood up and said, we know that you are not ordinary people, but we don't recognize you. We saw how you treated us along the way. Thank you. Jingyu looked at the group of people. She wanted to say something, but she did not know what to say. She bowed deeply to them and thanked them. Some of our brothers are seriously injured. They will rest here. Leopard and Ku'er will stay here guard. Pang Shiwei said, these brothers can't leave. We will come back to pick them up when we are done. All right. Jingyu nodded slowly and agreed. Just like that, it was decided. The night passed. When the sun rose, Jingyu picked up Qingge, who was still asleep. Qingge opened his sleepy eyes and looked at Jingyu. He frowned and said, the sun is not up yet. What are you doing? We should go. Jingyu poked Qingji's head and said, stop dawdling. Get dressed. Let's go. Leaving so early? When Qingge heard Jingyu's words, he shuddered and woke up. He stared at her and said. After he spoke, he looked around and realized that some people had yet to get up. Are they not leaving? Qingge asked again. They're staying here to protect the wounded. Jingyu frowned slightly and said, stop dawdling and get up quickly. Is that so? When Qingge heard Jingyu's words, he stood up reluctantly. He quickly packed his things and saw that everyone was ready. However, he did not find that familiar figure in the crowd. Chingu was slightly taken aback. His eyes were tinged with a faint trace of doubt. He narrowed his eyes and turned to Jingyu to ask, "Ninth sister-in-law, why don't I see little sister Kaur? She wants to stay here to take care of the wounded." Before Jingyu could reply, she saw Pang Shiwei walking over. He said calmly, "It's getting late. Let's go." "Okay," Jingyu responded and told everyone to leave. When Chingu heard Pang Shiwei's words, his eyes were filled with surprise. He looked at the group of people who were still asleep and saw them leave. Chapter 1698. Are you all right? Jingyu looked at Qing Ji's dazed expression and asked with a frown. "I haven't said goodbye to Ko-air yet." Qinggu looked at Jingyu with hidden bitterness. After he finished speaking, he became very vexed. He lowered his head and said, "If I knew that I would be leaving today, I wouldn't have gone to bed so early last night. It's not like you're not coming back." Jingyu looked at Qing Ji's appearance, and a faint smile appeared in her eyes. She said calmly, "After we rescue Yi Shui, we will be back. You will still be able to see your little sister Ko-air." Qing Ji's face instantly turned red. He turned his head and looked at the people behind him who were getting further and further away. In a daze, he seemed to see a sweet figure standing by the side and smiling at him. Jingyu turned her head to look at Qing Ji's appearance, and a faint smile appeared in her eyes. This brat is finally experiencing his first awakening of love. However, this Ko-air and Chingu are quite compatible. Jingyu turned her head and didn't say anything else. Yesterday, the people from the Sound Attack aristocratic family left in a hurry and successfully left behind traces. Jingyu's group was able to follow their footsteps. At this moment, they followed the footsteps of the Sound Attack aristocratic family and headed towards the Sand City. The Sand City was a very beautiful city built from sand and stone. Jingyu's group followed the footsteps of the Sound Attack aristocratic family and found the Sand City in the fastest way possible. They could see the ancient city from afar. From afar, the city seemed to be hidden in the wind and sand. If they walked over, there was still a long way to go. Jingyu narrowed her eyes and turned her head to look at the surroundings. This Sand City was really hidden deep. "Let's go. I wonder how lively this Sand City is." Jingyu's eyes were tinged with a faint smile as she spoke in a calm manner. "Let's go." Everyone took a step forward and personally saw the distant Sand City being revealed step by step. Such a shocking city. Back then, what kind of manpower was used to build this Sand City? When Jingyu walked closer, she heard the clear sounds of fighting. Above the Sand City, there was music everywhere. This was the first time that Jingyu saw music used to kill people. That's right, it was using music to kill people, not to control people. The clear sound of the instrument could only be described as a sound. When this sound spread out, it was like a sound blade, a sharp weapon for killing people. Everyone's eyes were tinged with a faint tremble. So this was the Sound Attack aristocratic family? Originally, I only knew that the members of the Sound Attack aristocratic family used sound to control beasts. Now it seems that my understanding of the Sound Attack aristocratic family is still too little. Yes. Xiao Qin nodded slowly and said, "No wonder people were so afraid of the family of Sound Attack. Yes, no one could not be fearful of such a power." Jingyu slowly frowned as she opened her mouth and said, "However, such a faction will either be able to remain supreme and continue to exist, or will be feared by all the other factions and eventually disappear. That will depend on how the person in charge of that power will choose." Xiao Qin's words were filled with contempt. When Jingyu heard Xiao Qin's words, she seemed to have thought of something. She turned her head slightly to look at Xiao Qin and slowly curled the corners of her mouth. Chapter 1699. Xing Yi by Jiao. Jingyu called out. She turned to look at the two of them and said, "I'll leave the rescue of Yi Shui to you guys. Go in from the side. You must find Yi Shui in the shortest time possible. We'll attack directly." "Yes." Xing Yi and Bai Jiao both nodded in agreement. "Let's go." Jingyu led the group and joined the battle. Jingyu clearly knew that as long as her pupils weren't exposed, the upper echelons of the family of sound attackers wouldn't make a move. Now, she just had to wait for Yishui to be safe. Then, Jingyu wouldn't have to worry about anything. The addition of Jingyu and the others didn't cause the current situation to become unbalanced. Jingyu and the others only wanted to attract the attention of these people so that they could buy more time for Xing Yi and Bai Jiao. However, the situation now seemed to be a little awkward. Those people who were shouting about the treasure suddenly stopped when Jingyu was having a good time fighting. "Don't you want the treasure? Our manor lord has agreed to let you in." Just as the commotion was in full swing, the family of sound attackers suddenly stopped and compromised. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock. "Don't listen to his nonsense." A loud shout rang out from the crowd. "Who knows if these people have set up a trap in the city and are waiting for us to go in so that they can kill us directly? Yes, yes, yes. If that wasn't the case, why would they lock us out for so long? Now that they've relented, there must be a trap. Brothers, don't be fooled. Kill them." After these few words, the scene that had finally calmed down with great difficulty started fighting again. Instantly, it was chaos again. Jingyu clearly heard who said the first sentence. Zhuiji, who was standing not far from her, had a calm expression on his face. As though he had felt Jingyu's gaze, he turned his head slightly and smiled calmly at Jingyu. This man was terrifyingly smart. Jingyu didn't even have time to think, but this person reacted in an instant. Jingyu was speechless. She had no idea what was going on. Jingyu Ezhin was in a dilemma. She frowned slightly and thought for a moment before reaching out to put on her veil. She reached out and put on her veil. She was in a daze. She didn't need it when she needed it, but it suddenly appeared when she didn't need it. "Let Xing take a look at you later." Xiao Chun looked at Jingyu and said, "You don't look well." "No need." Jingyu lowered her head helplessly and said, "I just feel a little tired. Let me eat something and I'll be fine." Xiao Chun frowned in dissatisfaction. He stared at Jingyu and asked, "Are you really okay?" "Yes." Jingyu leaned on Xiao Chun and said, "I just haven't had a good rest for so many days. I feel very tired. You'll be fine once this is over." Xiao Chun helped Jingyu to sit down. Qingge and Kuer were also very busy. Xiao Chun originally wanted Qingge to take a look, but those who were seriously injured needed a doctor even more now. Although Xiao Chun felt sorry for Jingyu, he knew the severity of the situation. He looked at Qingge and Kuer, who were busy, and turned to look at Jingyu eating. She really looked fine. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. Chapter 1700. Why did the people from the Sound Attack aristocratic family retreat so easily? Jingyu frowned and said, "They left in such a hurry. Something must have happened." "Is there need to say that?" Feng Ling bit down on the bandage and bandaged her arm. She turned to look at Jingyu and said, "The situation just now should have been a sure win for the Sound Attack aristocratic family. But they left. Isn't it obvious?" Feng Ling shrugged casually and said, "Something must have happened in your nest." Feng Ling saw that Jingyu still didn't understand, so she immediately smiled and shrugged her shoulders. "You mean something happened in Sand City?" Jingyu frowned and asked when she heard Feng Ling's words. "Don't you think so?" Feng Ling shrugged and looked at Jingyu and Xiao Chun. She said, "Let's put ourselves in their shoes. If we were in their shoes, wouldn't the situation be the same? If it weren't for the attack from the rear, would we give up on such a favorable situation? Besides," Feng Ling squinted and said. Feng Ling squinted her eyes and said, "We are not the only group that entered the desert. There are many others. Perhaps they have a complete map and have already arrived." "That's right." Jingyu nodded slowly and said, "That's what I thought at the time, but I wasn't sure. It seems like it's much easier to explain now." Jingyu narrowed her eyes and said, "The people from the Sound Attack aristocratic family obviously didn't notice our presence. Even if Sand City was attacked, they would definitely kill us first. But now that they have left, there is only one possibility. Those people from the Sound Attack aristocratic family have yet to discover us, or perhaps they think that we are not in this group. For us, this could be said to be a very good opportunity." "That's right." Feng Ling nodded happily and said, "What should we do now? There are too many wounded here. It's time for us to leave the team." Jingyu said with a deep frown, What we need to do now is to shout loudly and arouse everyone's anger again. Jingyu didn't even have time to sigh before she heard shouts from the other side. These people must be thinking of pocketing the treasures for themselves. Jingyu's eyes were filled with astonishment. That's right. Otherwise, why wouldn't they let us in? If their previous word were said to make everyone doubt that these people from the musical attack aristocratic family would suddenly be so kind, then when they heard that they were pocketing the treasures, everyone was instantly enraged. I don't know if this was the doing of the sound attack aristocratic family when I met the sandwolf in the desert. Exactly. I've heard that the people from the sound attack aristocratic family can actually use sound to control beasts. Perhaps they were the ones who summoned the wolves. They want to bury us in this desert. Right. I remember that when I was killing that hungry wolf, I heard music. I heard it too. I thought I heard wrong, but now it seems like it's true. This one sentence led to thousands of words. Everyone spoke one sentence after another. This originally vague matter suddenly became incomparably clear. Everyone's eyes were slowly filled with astonishment. Chapter 17:01. The faces of the aristocratic families turned ashen when they heard this. These people were talking about what they had done. The scene instantly became chaotic. In the midst of this chaos, a figure suddenly appeared on top of the city wall. That elegant figure was a man wearing a very casual cloth. Jingyu looked at the jade flute in the man's hand, and her heart trembled violently. Jingyu had seen this person before. It was just a chance encounter, but Jingyu remembered him very clearly. He was the person who had controlled her outside the Roman forest. The four people from the sound attack aristocratic family had played music together to control her. This person was one of the four people. How could Jingyu dare to refuse them? The melodious sound of the flute resounded. The man's face was very calm. The clear sound of the flute spread very far. Jingyu turned around slightly and looked behind her. Sure enough, this person had summoned the sandwolves. Countless sandwolves seemed to have been attracted by something as they charged over in a frenzy. The expression in Jingyu's eyes changed slightly, but there was no movement. Interrogation Officer 1 and Baijio had not returned yet. The person in charge of the sound attack aristocratic family had not appeared. Now was not the time to expose herself. Jingyu slowly clenched her fists and endured deeply. She slightly narrowed her eyes and calmly lowered her head. They're here. Kill them. Jingyu looked at the sandwolves that were rapidly approaching. She unceremoniously started a massacre. When everyone saw this scene, they were even more certain that the sandwolves were summoned by the sound attack aristocratic family. Jingyu and the others were happily killing, but Jingyu's heart was sullen. She could only hope that Xing Yi and Baijio's speed would be faster. Looking at the fierce sandwolves, Jingyu fiercely frowned. She was really annoyed by these damn wolves. Jingyu narrowed her eyes as she looked at the increasing number of wolves from afar. Are there really no end to these wolves? Jingyu couldn't help but be curious. How many wolves do you think there are in this desert? Just as Jingyu was feeling vexed, she suddenly heard the sound of music. Jingyu turned her head and saw that there was only one person on the wall. Now there were three more people, 2 men and a woman. Good heavens, they were all acquaintances. Now all of them had appeared, right? The 4 people who had appeared were the 4 people who had played the flute to control him back then. After such a long time, seeing the 4 of them again, everything that he had experienced back then seemed to be deeply engraved on his body. Jingyu's heart trembled uncontrollably when she saw the 4 of them. Everyone had actually come out. Furthermore, he seemed to be a little anxious. From the looks of it, something must have happened in Sand City. Needless to say, Interrogation Officer 1 and Baijio must have succeeded. As Jingyu thought about it, a faint smile appeared on her lips. Now the situation was getting more and more difficult to control. The hungry wolves were forcing them again and again. It couldn't go on like this. Strange pupil. Jingyu touched her eyes slightly. Thinking of the failure last time, Jingyu said with a bitter smile, "This time, we can't mess around. We must be good." Jingyu thought so and slowly closed her eyes. When she suddenly opened them, the bright light in her eyes flickered. The golden-green light expanded in an instant. The attacking wolves all stopped and retreated step by step. When the three people standing on the wall saw this scene, they instantly widened their eyes as if they had seen a ghost. Chapter 17:02. I can't control the wolf pack. Villa Master G's hand that was holding onto the jade flute trembled violently as he spoke with some fear. Me too. The other two men beside him nodded in agreement. It's the other pupil. After a moment of silence, the bearded man said, "The other pupil is really here. What do we do?" Just as everyone was panicking, they suddenly heard the sound of a pipa. The sound was so clear that everyone turned to look and saw second ant walking over. Her cold eyes were filled with murderous intent, and her hands didn't stop playing the pipa. When everyone saw this, they all picked up their instruments and started playing again. This time, the sound was even more striking. "Yishue is missing. Find the other pupil for me now." Second ant's cold voice rang out. Everyone who was playing the pipa widened their eyes as if they had heard something terrifying. They paused for a moment and then started searching for the people below. Jingyu could clearly feel the resistance and struggle in her mind. Jingyu even had the thought of giving up, but she forced herself to hold it in. She couldn't give up. If she did, she would lose. She couldn't lose. Jingyu took a deep breath and continued to persevere in silence. Xiaoqin slowly walked up and held Jingyu's hand. Jingyu's body trembled slightly. She turned to look at Xiaoqin, and the control in her mind suddenly loosened. The people from the family of musical attacks seized control in an instant. "Don't be afraid." Xiaoqin stared into Jingyu's eyes and said, "You are the most special existence. The people from the family of musical attacks can't control you. As long as you don't want to be controlled, you won't be controlled. You are a human." Xiaoqin looked deeply into Jingyu's eyes and said, "I am a human." Jingyu's heart trembled as if something had suddenly awakened in her. Back then, because of Qin Bai's words, she had always been afraid. The other pupil was the beast pupil. That's right, beast eyes were indeed beast eyes. But I'm human. I'm Jingyu. I'm a human being, not a beast. Jingyu's eyes lit up slightly. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly felt a wind blade flying towards her. Jingyu immediately tilted her head to avoid it, and the veil on her head suddenly slipped off. She turned her head to look at the city wall with her golden-green eyes filled with cold, killing intent. I found the other pupil. The moment Jingyu looked over, her second aunt, who was playing the pipa, had a faint smile in her eyes. She seemed to be very excited as she played the people loudly. The demonic music drilled into Jingyu's ears. The sound was so familiar, and the feeling was so familiar. Jingyu's face instantly paled. The people around the second aunt also noticed Jingyu, and they suddenly increased the strength of their pipa. Everyone's eyes were filled with intense shock when they saw Jingyu's golden-green eyes. Even Zhuji, who already knew, was shocked, not to mention Pang Shiwei, He Xiong, and the others who didn't know. The other pupil imperial concubine. Jingyu's name might be known to a few people, but the other pupil imperial concubine's name made them tremble. Now that they saw Jingyu's eyes, they were instantly stunned. Chapter 17:03. They had been traveling with the Empress of different pupils the entire time. What the hell was going on? On the other side, Jingyu held her head in pain. She knelt on the ground and couldn't move at all. She frowned fiercely. Her eyes were full of fear, as if she was extremely terrified. When Xiaoqin saw Jingyu in such a state, his heart throbbed in pain. He wanted to help Jingyu, but didn't know what to do. Jingyu. When Shangwan Linglan saw Jingyu in such a state, his face turned pale. He suddenly stood up as if he had thought of something and rushed to Jingyu. He shook Jingyu's body forcefully and said, "Look at me, Jingyu, look at me." Shangwan Linglan stared at Jingyu and said, "Back then, you were controlled and almost killed me. Do you still want to do the same?" "Jingyu, look at me." Shangwan Linglan stared at Jingyu's eyes and said. When his words reached Jingyu's ears, Jingyu paused for a moment and looked at Shangwan Linglan. "Linglan." Jingyu pursed her lips tightly and called out, "It's me." Shangwan Linglan stared at Jingyu and replied. He tightened his arms around Jingyu, but his expression was very calm. Jingyu slowly lowered her head, and there was a strong struggle in her eyes. She sighed deeply and frowned as if she had thought of something. It was the scene outside the Roman forest. Jingyu could almost see the bloody wound on Shangwan Linglan's chest. She had stabbed him with her own hands. Could it be that he was going to let such a thing happen again? No, definitely not. Jingyu's heart trembled violently. She slowly turned around, and there was a strong light in her eyes. Linglan, I hurt you once, and it will be a lifetime of pain. I won't hurt you a second time. Jingyu looked quietly at Shangwan Linglan and said, If it comes to that, I will kill myself first. That pair of golden-green eyes flashed with an intense light at this moment. These words made Shangwan Linglan and Xiao Chun tremble violently. At this moment, they looked at Jingyu with a different burning gaze. Sound attack family. Do you really think that you can control everything just because you have mastered the sound attack? Jingyu's eyes were filled with coldness. She looked at the city wall with an icy gaze. What's going on? Why isn't the other pupil affected at all? The woman's eyes were filled with shock. She had been a little agitated when she saw Jingyu hugging her head in pain. However, this situation didn't last for long. It made everyone tremble in fear. Why was the sound attack completely unaffected by the other pupil? Get out of the way. Jingyu turned around coldly and said to Pang Shiwei and the rest. Pang Shiwei and the rest were slightly taken aback when they heard Jingyu's words. They seemed to have thought of something as they pursed their lips and walked away. The music continued. Jingyu gritted her teeth, and her golden-green eyes shone brightly. Pang Shiwei and the rest stepped aside. Jingyu's eyes were filled with a faint light. She didn't seem to want to say anything. She lowered her eyes and said, This time, I will not back down. Chapter 1704. When Jingyu finished speaking, Jingyu looked at the people on the city wall with a scrutinizing look. She allowed the music to enter her ears, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly as she listened to her heartbeat. Different pupil. The one who controls them is not me. What a joke. These people are actually trying to control me. In this trance, Jingyu seemed to have heard the words of the fortune-teller in the Tokyo Imperial City when she pretended to be blind in the endless stream of people. Victory lies in the heart. If one's heart is unwavering, what else is impossible? That's right. You can only control my thoughts and actions, but you can't control my heart. Jingyu's lips curled into a faint smile. Controlling beasts as kings can overturn the world. Ha ha! Jingyu suddenly laughed, as if she had understood something ridiculous. At this moment, a strong sense of contempt rose from Jingyu's heart. That was her disdain for the world. The people on the city wall looked at the sound attack family with disdain. A mere musical attack aristocratic family wants to control me? Jingyu sneered. She raised her hand slightly, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. They didn't know why, but when they saw Jingyu like this, they suddenly felt as if they were looking at a high and mighty king. His black robe was so noble, and his hair fluttered in the wind, causing one's heart to flutter along with his hair. Everything was so strange, but also seemed so harmonious. The pair of golden-green eyes shone brightly under the scorching sun. Jingyu's eyes were tinged with a faint smile. Look, while everyone was still captivated by Jingyu, they suddenly felt that there was a sudden change in the sky. The originally ferocious sand wolves seemed to have seen something terrifying and started to whimper. Then, when Jingyu turned to look, they lowered their noble heads as if they were paying respects to the highest king. You must have never seen such a scene. The sand wolves, lizards, and sand snakes that came out of nowhere in the darkness had all appeared at this moment. However, after they appeared, they seemed to have seen something incomparably terrifying. They trembled and crawled on the ground, not daring to move at all. The black mass of beasts that knelt down with their heads bowed was a shocking sight to behold. Perhaps it was because this scene was so shocking that the person playing on the city wall was so shocked by this scene that he didn't realize when he stopped playing. He looked at Jingyu, who was standing at the foot of the city wall, and his body trembled violently. How How could this be? The woman's eyes were filled with astonishment. You have succeeded. Xiao Chun, who was standing beside Jingyu, didn't look the least bit surprised when he saw Jingyu's reaction. His pitch-black eyes were filled with gratification as he spoke faintly. Xing Er. Jingyu didn't know what the gratification in Xiao Chen's eyes meant, but before Jingyu could ask, she saw Xiao Chen call out to Xing Er. Chapter 1705. Yes. Xing Er responded calmly. Then, under Jingyu's gaze, he walked to the side and took out a small signal flare from somewhere. It flew into the air like a firework. When Jingyu saw this, she turned to Shanghuan Linglan as if to ask him something. However, when she saw that Shanghai Linglan was also confused, she frowned. What was going on? Just as Jingyu was about to ask Xiao Chun, she heard a different sound. Jingyu was slightly taken aback. She slowly turned her head and looked at the sand dune in the distance. She vaguely saw the figure of a person. Jingyu was slightly taken aback. She thought that she had seen wrongly. However, when Jingyu blinked her eyes and focused her gaze, the figure that was striding forward became clearer and clearer. As the figures appeared one after another, Jingyu's eyes were filled with astonishment. Rows of tall men and horses appeared. The uniformed army rode their horses and quickly surrounded them. This army was like a tidal wave, causing Jingyu's eyes to widen. This is... Jingyu turned her head to look at Xiao Chun in astonishment. When she saw Xiao Chen's calm expression, she knew that Xiao Chun had arranged this long ago. However, why didn't she know anything about it? Second Andy look? When the people below saw this scene, their eyes were filled with astonishment. However, when the people on the city wall saw this scene, they almost lost their grip on their musical instruments. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. When they saw the thousands of men and horses approaching, they only had one thought in their minds. It's over. All of this was planned long ago. The person who was addressed as Second Ant took a deep breath. Her heart trembled as she pursed her lips tightly. Her eyes flashed with a very calm expression. Second Ant, what do we do now? Mannerhead G asked. Second Ant smiled faintly and said, Even if I die, I'll drag a few down with me. Second Ant, don't be rash. When those people heard the woman's words, their eyes were filled with shock as they asked. Ha ha ha. The woman said very calmly, I shouldn't have listened to your words back then and endured it again and again. Now that this has happened, do you still want me to submit to them? I, Shuiying, have gone through 2 generations of changes. I've propped up this huge musical aristocratic family. I've seen it prosper. It's a first-rate aristocratic family on this continent. I've also seen it get destroyed with my own eyes. It's like a tortoise hiding in a corner of this continent. Now, I have tried my best to restore my family's glory, but I have taken a wrong step and pushed the fate of my family into a bottomless abyss. The woman named Shuiying said sorrowfully. She didn't try to hide her voice at all. Everyone below could hear her clearly. They could even hear the hoarseness in her voice. Back then, Master told me that we, the Sound Attack clan, would either become the kings of the world or never appear in the world again. If the clan can't protect its members, then, even if they die with the clan, they can't let any of their members wander about in the outside world. Chapter 1706. I will always remember Master's words. Shuiying slowly curled her lips and said, Before Master passed away, he passed on decades of internal energy to me so that I did not look the least bit old in the past 100 years. Now, I have to live up to Master's last words. When Shuiying said this, her eyes were filled with murderous intent. Villa Master Ji and the others beside Shuiying seemed to have thought of something. Their eyes widened and their hearts trembled uncontrollably. Second Ant, don't! Everyone suddenly cried out. However, before they could finish speaking, they saw Shuiying pick up the pipa and wave her fingers abruptly. The invisible sound blade flew out from her fingers and flew toward the disciples of the family of musical attack in all directions. When Villa Master Ji, who was beside Shuiying, wanted to stop her, Shui Ying viciously slapped the pipa in her hand. The powerful internal energy blasted Villain Master Ji and the others back. I'm the one who killed them. I will bear all the consequences of this. Shui Ying's eyes were filled with coldness. If you want to go down to the 18th level of hell, let me go down alone. Shui Ying's eyes were filled with madness. The disciples of the family of musical attack would never have imagined that Shui Ying would kill them. This was the aunt they had always respected and loved. The merciless sound blade was a sharp weapon that reaped lives. Everyone was stunned by this sudden turn of events. Just as Shui Ying was killing in a frenzy, there was a sudden rush of sound from a zither. It was like a powerful sound blade that instantly cut the strings of the pipa. Enough! A very weak and clear voice was heard, and there was a hint of sickly weakness in it. Aunt, are you really going to kill all the disciples of the family of musical attack? The woman who spoke was holding a zither in her hands. Her pale face was full of questions as she stared quietly at Shui Ying with her clear eyes. Shui Ying's eyes were filled with shock when she saw that the pipa in her hand had been cut in half. I don't like disputes, and I don't like this family of musical attack. The woman's face was very pale. Jingyu even felt that she might fall down from the city wall at any moment. Imperial concubine of different pupils, there is no deep hatred between us. As the woman spoke, she slowly strummed the zither in her hand. The tune was one that Jingyu was familiar with. In fact, the effect of this tune on Jingyu was even more shocking than the five of them playing it together. I can control you, but I can't control you. The woman stopped playing the zither and looked at Jingyu quietly. My illness can't be delayed any longer. At most, I have 1 more year. I don't want to see war, and I don't want to see a scene of life and death. Musical attacks were originally made for musical instruments, but at some point it evolved into a weapon of murder. Everyone has forgotten the root of music. The woman curled her lips mockingly as she spoke. The winner takes all. Now that we have fallen into your hands, I just want to tell you that it's not that you and I can't coexist, but that we have been forced to. I've sent your friends back to you. Now that the family of musical attack has suffered countless casualties, do you still want to go on a killing spree? When the woman asked if she still wanted to go on a killing spree, Jingyu clearly felt a strong murderous aura. That feeling made Jingyu feel very uncomfortable. She even felt threatened. Chapter 1707. Jingyu was flustered by the tune that the woman had just played. It was a tune that she had never heard before. Jingyu slowly frowned. Just as she was deep in thought, the sound of something piercing through the air was heard. Screech! 2 icy arrows pierced Shui Ying's throat and the throats of 2 other short and stout men. The woman who was playing the zither placed her hand on the zither almost instantly. In order to show your sincerity in reconciling, these 2 lives are a trade. Before the woman could play the zither, a cold voice was heard. A man in black armor, riding a horse, appeared from within the army. Xiao Bai. When Jingyu saw Xiao Bai's handsome face and the longbow in his hand, she knew that the person who had shot the arrows was Xiao Bai. You've gone too far. Villa Head Ji was trembling all over. That's right, I'm bullying you. Xiao Bai curled his lips coldly and said, Could it be that you want to experience what it feels like to massacre an entire city? Miss, you'd better let go of your hand. Do you think that I'll give you the chance to hurt my mother? Xiao Bai's eyes were filled with hostility as he glared at the woman and said, I originally didn't want to take their lives. However, I saw that you were very arrogant about your sound attack technique and actually dared to threaten my mother. Since that's the case, I'll let you see if your sound attack or my arrows are faster. Let's see if your blade is faster or my brother's blades are faster. If you dare to move a single inch, I'll slaughter your entire city with my sound attack. As Xiao Bai spoke, the corners of his mouth curled up happily. His pitch-black eyes stared intently at the people on the city wall as he said slowly, Do you want to try and see if I dare to do so? Xiao Bai's words were so arrogant that everyone who saw this scene silently swallowed their saliva. Their eyes were tinged with a little fear. At this moment, they felt a deep sense of suffocation. The people on the city wall looked at Xiao Bai and listened to his words. They couldn't help but tremble uncontrollably. No one knew whether it was from fear or anger, but after Xiao Bai's words, no one from the Sound Attack family dared to say another word. The surroundings fell into a deathly silence. Jingyu, a voice called out from the side. Jingyu turned her head and saw that Yi Shui and Bai Jiu had come out. Jingyu's uneasy heart finally relaxed. Yi Shui, are you all right? Are you hurt? Jingyu looked at Yi Shui anxiously. I'm fine. Jingyu pursed her lips slightly as she looked at the situation in front of her and said, the people from the Sound Attack family didn't do anything to me. They just put me under house arrest. Let them go. I believe that after this incident, they will understand a lot. Jingyu was silent for a moment as she looked at the situation in front of her. She looked at Shui Ying, who was still talking a second ago, but now fell on the sand wall of the Sand City with his eyes wide open. She suddenly felt very sad. The Sound Attack family had fallen and received the retribution they deserved. However, Jingyu felt that her heart was stifled. Jingyu opened her mouth slightly, as if she wanted to say something. However, just as Jingyu was about to say something, the pair of golden-green eyes suddenly turned pitch black. She felt her heart skip a beat and then collapsed without any warning. Chapter 1708. Your mother, Jingyu. Jingyu heard the panicked cries of the crowd as she fell into a coma. A familiar scent wafted into her nose. Jingyu woke up amidst the unstable, shaking, and slowly opened her eyes. Her brain stopped working for a moment. She moved her body and realized that she was being held in someone's arms. This familiar scent made it obvious who was hugging her. Are you awake? Xiao Chen's voice came from above her head with a hint of affection. How long have I been asleep? Jingyu asked with a slight frown. Not long. 2 days. Xiao Chen looked at Jingyu and said calmly, I've been asleep for so long. What's wrong with me? Jingyu suddenly jumped up and swallowed her saliva. She looked at Xiao Chen and asked, What's wrong with me? Why did I suddenly fall asleep? You fainted. Xiao Chen touched Jingyu's cheek and said helplessly, When will you learn to be more mindful of yourself? It was fine when you got pregnant the first time, but now you're pregnant again. Don't you feel anything? What? Jingyu was stunned for half a minute. She stared at Xiao Chen and asked crisply, I'm pregnant again? Yes. Xiao Chen nodded slowly. He looked at Jingyu and said, You've been pregnant for more than a month, almost 2 months. Oh my God. Jingyu's face twitched violently. For the first time, she felt that she was so stupid. However, she had been worried about other things during this period of time and hadn't paid attention to it. Jingyu frowned deeply. Why am I pregnant again? Jingyu frowned, feeling conflicted. She reached out and touched her belly, feeling very bitter. I just gave birth to little potato. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chen angrily and said, You're a bad person. I don't want another one. I didn't expect it either. Xiao Chen touched the tip of his nose helplessly and said, I didn't think about it at first, but I didn't pay attention. So, now that you're pregnant, let's give birth. I don't want to. Jingyu stared at Xiao Chen angrily. She looked at Xiao Chen's calm face and was filled with hatred. She looked at Xiao Chen with disdain and said, Why is it that women give birth in this world? It would be great if it was a man. I'll let you experience what it's like to give birth. Jingyu said angrily as she stared at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen's face froze when he heard Jingyu's words. He silently hugged Jingyu and said, I heard that the second time you give birth won't be as painful as the first time. I promise. What's the use of your promise? Go away. Jingyu shook off Xiao Chen's hand in disdain. She lowered her head and stared at her stomach. Her heart was filled with bitterness, but there was also a hint of joy in her heart. So many things had happened during Little Potato's birth. This time, she couldn't let anything happen to the child. When the child was born, Little Potato would come back. It would be great to have a companion then. Jingyu thought about it and felt much better. She sighed deeply and turned to look at Xiao Chen's calm face. Hey, are you unhappy that I'm pregnant? Jingyu pouted and asked Xiao Chen unhappily. Chapter 1709. Happy, very happy. Xiao Chen looked at Jingyu's expression and quickly reached out to hug her. He gently rubbed his head against Jingyu's head. Oomph, that's more like it. Jingyu lay in Xiao Chen's arms in satisfaction. The bumpy carriage made Jingyu frown slightly. She then asked, "Where are we now?" "We are still in the desert." Xiao Chen pursed his lips slightly, as if he knew what Jingyu wanted to ask. He faintly lowered his eyes and said, "Xiaobai didn't make things difficult for the Sound Attack family. The Sound Attack family signed an agreement to never step out of the Pingyao Desert. The agreement lasts for 100 years, Xiao Chen said very calmly. Now we're going back to Tokyo? 100 years agreement. Jingyu slowly nodded. Her eyes were very calm. She slightly narrowed her eyes and said, "That's good. After 100 years, the world will change. As for what it will be like, time will decide." But Jingyu's words changed. She looked at Xiao Chen and said, "When did you make such preparations?" "Xiao, I brought so many people." "It was the emperor's arrangement." Xiao Chen faintly lowered his head. He played with Jingyu's fingers and said, "This was the emperor's decision. It was also used to invite us back." "What do you mean?" Jingyu was slightly taken aback. When she raised her head to look into Xiao Chen's dark eyes, Jingyu immediately smiled. Xiao Chen didn't say anything, but Jingyu understood. She faintly curved her eyebrows and said, "This is the emperor's fear of us." "Yes." The corners of Xiao Chen's lips curled up slightly as he said, "If you let us go outside, Xiao Yuling will have to worry about whether or not we will declare ourselves kings. With our current rallying power, establishing a royal city is a simple matter. Instead of worrying about us declaring ourselves as kings outside, it's better to trap us in Dongqing, right under his nose. If there's really anything unusual, we can prepare for it immediately." Xiao Chen's words were very calm. It was as if he didn't care at all that Xiao Yuling was scheming against him. "Aren't you angry?" Jingyu was immediately curious and asked calmly, "If Xiao Yuling didn't scheme against me, I would find it strange." Xiao Chen tightened his grip on Jingyu's hand. He looked at Jingyu and said, "When Xiao Yuling was the crown prince, he knew how to rely on me. When he was still the crown prince. Now that he is the emperor, he is smart not to offend me. Instead, he is praising us endlessly." Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes slightly and said calmly, "It's respect, but it's also telling us clearly that he's afraid." As for me, Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and said, "I don't care about that position. However, if he doesn't sit well, I don't mind replacing him. The Tokyo was ruined once. I don't want the Tokyo to be ruined a second time." "I understand." Jingyu nodded. She looked at Xiao Chen's side profile. She used to think that Xiao Chen had too many things in his head. Now, it seemed that there were indeed too many things in his head. "There is one more thing." The carriage was silent for a moment. Then Xiao Chen said, "I know that you are still thinking about Jian and Feng in the Roman forest. I asked Shengwan Linglan to bring them close to the Tokyo Imperial City." Chapter 17:10. As for your desire to return to the forest, you are pregnant, and it is inconvenient for you to move around. Once the child is safely born, let's go together. How about that?" Xiao Chen looked deeply into Jingyu's eyes as he asked. When Jingyu heard Xiao Chen's words, a faint smile appeared in her eyes. She reached out to hug Xiao Chen's neck and said, "Since you have already made up your mind, what's wrong with me?" Xiao Chen looked at Jingyu's expression and reached out to hug Jingyu's waist. He raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "Now that everything has been resolved, can you be at ease?" "Yes, I'm at ease." Jingyu turned around and lay in Xiao Chen's arms. She looked at the shaking roof of the carriage and was slightly absent-minded. All these things happened so quickly. From the moment they were chased out, they began a journey of desperation. Along the way, some people died, some lived, and some are the same as before. Some of them, however, found a partner for life. Some people died with regret, some died with unwillingness, and some left with relief. In this strange world, Jingyu pursued comfort and peace. She didn't want to live such a vigorous life. Perhaps she really wasn't suited for peace. There were too many people she cared about and needed her protection. Jingyu treasured this very much. Perhaps she didn't expect that Ning Xiangyuan, who used to treat her sincerely, would end up in such a situation. Now that she thought about it, Ning Xiangyuan had probably always been that kind of person. She also didn't expect that the first time she met Shangwan Linglan on the streets of the Imperial City, the first time they met, would end up in such a situation. That silly girl who had protected her no matter what happened in the Imperial City had changed overnight. That silly girl who had insisted on following her even if it meant sacrificing the entire general's residence. Back then, she had said that her father was her father. She wanted Jing Yu to know clearly that in this life, this silly girl was someone she would protect with her life. Great, Shangwan Linglan, this silly girl. She met the person who was willing to protect her with his life. How wonderful! Tears welled up in Jing Yu's eyes as she thought about it. She always felt that she had walked through her entire life in a trance. Along the way, there were many parting of life and death. There were also many times when she was touched and sad, laughing and crying. Many years later, when they were old and gray-haired, they would sit in the courtyard and talk about their experiences. It would definitely be like listening to a shocking story. Jing Yu closed her eyes. Her golden green eyes were sparkling. She lowered her eyes, and the corners of her mouth curled up. She seemed to have thought of something interesting, which made people feel happy. The road back to the imperial city of Tokyo was very smooth. They didn't encounter any strange assassinations or strange poisons. They didn't have to worry about this and that anymore. The noisy past was gradually fading away. After 3.5 months in Jing Yu's stomach, Jing Yu, Xiao Chun, and the rest finally returned to the Tokyo. It was as if they had finally returned to the starting point after a long journey. It made their hearts surge with emotion. The 9 emperors' carriage entered the city. It was still as grand as before. The only difference was that Jing Yu was sitting in the carriage. She lifted the curtain slightly and looked at the people lining the road to welcome them. She suddenly felt that it was very funny. Chapter 17:11. When she had been chased out by everyone. But now it was completely different. The human heart. One interesting thing. Are you ready? Just as Jing Yu was pondering, Xiao Chen's voice rang out. Jing Yu turned her head and met Xiao Chen's pitch-black eyes. Even after so many years, his eyes were still as moving as ever. Of course. Jing Yu raised her chin slightly and replied with a faint smile on her face. The door to the carriage opened. Emperor Xiao Yuling and Empress Lu Miaoqiu were standing in front of the palace gates. They were wearing bright yellow dragon robes and phoenix robes. Xiao Chun, who was wearing a black robe, stepped out of the carriage. He casually stood by the side of the carriage. Instantly, the breathing of the crowd quieted down. Xiao Chun turned and stretched out his hand towards the door of the carriage. His deep eyes quietly looked at Jing Yu. When Jing Yu saw Xiao Chun like this, a faint smile appeared in her eyes. However, she lowered her eyes and placed her hand on Xiao Chen's hand. Under everyone's gaze, Jing Yu, who was also wearing a luxurious black robe, casually tied up her hair. She walked down the carriage with Xiao Chen's support and stood beside Xiao Chun. That pair of golden green eyes shone with a demonic light under the sunlight. That originally beautiful face was even more startling because of this pair of different colored eyes. At this moment, everyone's breathing became lighter. They personally watched as Xiao Chun and Jing Yu walked toward Xiao Yuling. Greetings to the Emperor and Empress. The two bowed. Jing Yu wasn't used to the custom after so long. 9th Emperors, 9th Imperial Aunt, please rise. It's been a tiring journey. He hadn't seen Xiao Yuling for a long time. Now that he saw Xiao Yuling like this, he felt that it was very interesting. The way she spoke was somewhat like how an emperor should be. Your Majesty is too serious. Xiao Chen bowed once again. Your Majesty. Qin Xie heard that the 9th Imperial concubine is still pregnant. Why don't we enter the palace first? Lu Miaoqiu said. Yes. When the 9th Emperors and 9th Imperial Aunt returned, we were so happy that we forgot. Let's go in. Xiao Yuling turned and walked into the palace. Xiao Chun and Xiao Yuling walked in front of the palace gates. Jing Yu and Lu Miaoqiu naturally walked behind them. Yu, Lu Miaoqiu held Jingyu's hand and called out, "Why did you come out personally to receive them?" Jingyu glared at Lu Miaoqiu and said unhappily, "Look at your big belly." Jingyu said as she looked helplessly at Lu Miaoqiu's belly. It was already 5 months old. Lu Miaoqiu was wearing a loose robe, but it still couldn't hide it. "It's fine." Lu Miaoqiu held Jingyu's hand intimately and said, "I just didn't expect you to be pregnant. We're only 2 months apart. It's really amazing." "Yes, I didn't expect it either," Jingyu said as she touched her own belly. She arched her eyebrows and said, "Now, only Linglan is left. This time, the most important thing to do is to arrange Linglan and Xing Er's wedding." "Yes, we'll tell His Majesty later." Lu Miaoqiu and Jingyu nodded in agreement. The two of them quickly settled the matter. Because of the military matters, the person involved had to first settle the soldiers and horses before he could enter the palace to report. When he entered the palace, he finished his official report and rushed to the harem without saying a word. Chapter 17:12. Little Miaoqiu, Little Yaya. Before this person entered the room, Shangguan Linglan's voice could be heard. The palace maid waiting outside didn't even need to announce his arrival. "Come in." Jingyu's eyes were tinged with a faint smile. She saw that before Lu Miaoqiu finished speaking, Shangguan Linglan had already rushed in. He looked at Jingyu and Lu Miaoqiu with joy and then sat down on an empty seat at the side. "I'm so thirsty." Shangguan Linglan poured himself a cup of water without saying anything and said, "I've done my best to help the emperor, but he didn't even let me drink water and chase me out. I don't know what he said to the 9th emperors. Even if he told you, you wouldn't understand." Jingyu rolled her eyes in disdain and said, "You came at the right time. We were just discussing your marriage." As soon as Jingyu finished speaking, Shangguan Linglan spat out a mouthful of tea. Fortunately, Jingyu and Lu Miaoqiu dodged in time and were spared. It was a pity that the tea and snacks on the table were ruined. "Shangguan Linglan, you spat out my good tea and almost ruined mine. You stinking brat." Lu Miaoqiu looked at the tea and snacks that she had carefully prepared, but Shangguan Linglan directly spat out a mouthful of tea. She was so angry that her face turned ashen. Cough, cough, cough. When Shangguan Linglan heard Lu Miaoqiu's words, he immediately coughed and said, "Who told you to suddenly say that? What?" Jingyu rolled her eyes and looked at Shangguan Linglan and said, "Look, Miaoqiu is pregnant and you're not married yet. Last time, you had an excuse to say that I wasn't around. Now we're both here. What do you want this time?" Shangguan Linglan lowered his head in grievance and sighed deeply. He said, "I know. Isn't it just getting married? Let's do it. It's good that you agree." Jingyu and Lu Miaoqiu smiled faintly and said, "Since that's the case, let Miaoqiu talk to the emperor. As for the arrangements, the Wang estate and the general's estate will handle it together." Hey, what are you two doing?" Shangguan Linglan looked at Jing and Lu Miaoqiu and suddenly had a bad premonition. "Don't worry about it." Jingyu smiled at Shangguan Linglan and said, "Just wait for your wedding. As for Xing Er's identity, Miaoqiu will leave it to you. I'll take care of Xing Er's residence." "No problem." Lu Miaoqiu nodded happily. Shangguan Linglan stared blankly at Lu Miaoqiu and Jingyu. They were so excited that they didn't care who was getting married. Jingyu and Lu Miaoqiu hadn't seen each other for a long time. Now that they finally met, they naturally had a lot to talk about. The three of them talked for a long time. Xiao Yuling and Xiao Chun also talked for a long time. By the time they left the palace, the sky had already darkened. Jingyu returned to the Wang estate and fell asleep without saying anything. She hadn't had a good sleep in a long time. Jingyu had slept in too many places. In the trees, in the forest, on the grass, on the rocks, in the desert, in the wind, in the most dangerous places and environments. Chapter 17:13. She had miraculously fallen asleep. Jingyu wasn't used to the hustle and bustle of the imperial city at first. She hadn't been served for a long time. Jingyu was still a little dazed. She turned her head slightly to look at the soft bed. Jingyu's lips curled up slightly. She really came back? Jingyu propped herself up and sat up. In Xiao, who was outside, heard the commotion and said happily, "Imperial Consort, are you awake?" This familiar voice and familiar form of address caused Jingyu's eyes to be slightly dazed. She then replied, "I'm awake. Come in." "Yes." Yin Xiao led a group of people inside and helped Jingyu wash up. She took out several clothes for Jingyu to choose from. Jingyu frowned slightly and seemed to be a little impatient. She had always worn black clothes in the past. When did she have so many things to choose from? "I'll take this one." Jingyu randomly pointed at a piece. Yin Xiao and a group of maids came forward to help Jingyu dress. Jingyu frowned uncomfortably. The maids who were serving her looked at Jingyu's frown and didn't dare to breathe loudly. When most of these people had left, Jingyu seemed to slowly sigh in relief and allowed Yin Xiao to help her dress. "Yin Xiao, where did Xiaochen go?" Jingyu looked at herself in the mirror and asked Yin Xiao with narrowed eyes. "The 9th emperors went to the palace." Yin Xiao bowed slightly and replied, "Why did the emperor summon him out of the blue?" Jingyu frowned slightly and asked curiously, "Imperial Consort, you don't know yet, right? In a few days, the emperor of the northern pastoral country will come to visit our Tokyo. He said that he wants to establish friendly relations." Yin Xiao put in the last hairpin for Jingyu. Then she bowed slightly and said, "Imperial Consort, it's done. Hellion Theo is coming to Tokyo." When Jingyu heard Yin Xiao's words, her eyes were filled with curiosity. She stood up with Yin Xiao's help and asked with narrowed eyes, "When are they coming? Why didn't I hear Xiaochen mention it?" This servant also does not know when Emperor Hellion will arrive. Yin Xiao lowered her head slightly and said, "Last night, the imperial concubine slept early and woke up late today. The 9th emperors must not have had time to tell the imperial concubine." "That's true." Jingyu nodded slowly. She lowered her eyes slightly and said, "Did you send the visiting card I asked you to send to the general's residence yesterday?" "It was sent." General Shangwan said that he will personally come to visit the 9th emperors and the imperial concubine tomorrow. Yin Xiao replied respectfully. Jingyu nodded slightly. After eating breakfast, she walked around the courtyard. Looking at the courtyard, Jingyu sighed deeply. She was used to these bumpy days. Suddenly, she was not used to such a leisurely life. Jingyu sighed deeply and looked at the beautiful flowers under the sun. Just as she was in a daze, she saw a servant running towards Jingyu. "What is it?" Jingyu looked at the person running in front of her. She frowned slightly and asked, "Imperial concubine. Scholar Xiao requests to see the imperial concubine." The servant said respectfully, "Scholar Xiao? Who is it?" When Jingyu suddenly heard this Scholar Xiao, she was stunned and asked in confusion. Yin Xiao quickly went forward and said, "Imperial concubine, it's Lord Yijuan. The emperor gave him the surname of Xiao, and he holds a position in the scholar courtyard. In the future, he will be the crown prince's teacher." Chapter 17:14. "So, it's Yijuan." Jingyu's eyes widened in joy as she said, "Quickly invite him in. I haven't seen Yijuan in a long time. I don't know how old this child is. The last time I came back, I was in too much of a hurry to meet him. At that time, there was a coup, and Jingyu was very busy. Now, she finally had the time to meet him. Originally, Jingyu wanted Yijuan to come directly to the inner courtyard. However, Yijuan was no longer a child and could not enter the inner courtyard as he wished. Thus, she had no choice but to meet him in the main hall. Jingyu sat on the high seat and was slightly stunned when she saw the person walking in. Even the teacup in her hand was stunned. "Xiao, Yijuan greets the 9th imperial concubine." That gentle voice, handsome face, and tall figure caused Jingyu to be stunned for a long time. It was only after Yin Xiao reminded her that Jingyu came back to her senses. No need to be so polite. Jingyu put down the teacup in her hand and beckoned to Yijuan. "Come up a little." "Yes." Yijuan was silent for a moment and walked in front of Jingyu. Jingyu looked at the handsome man standing in front of her. She could not imagine that the stinky brat who used to bare his teeth at her would look like this after so many years. Uff. Jingyu instantly laughed. Looking at Yijuan's face, she seemed to recall the first time Xiao Chun brought Yijuan back to the residence. This brat called her an ugly woman the moment he opened his mouth. Now, he was so polite, who said that only a woman could change 18 times between childhood and womanhood. This man had changed 19 times. Yijuan, you've grown up. Jing Yu's golden green eyes flickered with deep nostalgia as she said, if we met on the streets, I wouldn't dare to recognize you. When Yijuan heard Jing Yu's words, he lowered his head and said, I think I'm growing up too slowly. Otherwise, I would be able to help you. Unfortunately, when I grew up and could help you, you didn't need me anymore. What are you talking about? Jing Yu pursed her lips and looked at Yijuan. I heard that you're already a scholar? Well, my child is born in the future. Can't you help me teach him well? It's easy if you want to help me. I'm just afraid you'll find it troublesome, Jing Yu said with a slight smile. No, Xiao Yijuan agreed without hesitation. I will never forget the kindness that the 9th Emperors and the 9th Imperial Concubine have shown me. It's not a big deal. If you weren't smart, I wouldn't have been able to help you. Jing Yu looked at Yijuan and said, Xiao Chun has gone to the palace and should be back soon. Stay for dinner before you leave. Thank you, 9th Imperial Concubine, for your hospitality. However, Yijuan is now an official, and I have many things to take care of at home. I won't disturb you. Yijuan raised his head and looked at Jing Yu. His lips moved slightly as he said, I just came to see you, as long as you're safe. This silly child. Jing Yu looked at Yijuan's appearance and slightly raised her eyebrows. She said, since you have something on you, then I won't keep you. Seeing that you're living such a good life, I'm relieved. Thank you, 9th Imperial Concubine. Yijuan thanked her again. After sending Yijuan off, Jing Yu stood in the hall and sighed deeply. She didn't know why, but when she saw that Yijuan had grown up, Jing Yu suddenly felt a little upset in her heart. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.